Hello, everyone. I pray that you're having an amazing Wednesday, that it's productive, constructive, in alignment with your purpose. It's Hump Day Wednesday. It is Wisdom Wednesday, whatever you want to call it. But it's a great day to be alive, isn't it? I'm Dr. Wanita Mercer, and I'm the founder and chief heart leader at Lead My Heart Executive Coaching and Consulting. Um, Good. I actually started by introducing myself today because I normally forget that. But I just wanted to welcome you all to joining me for the second episode of the series that I'm doing right now called The Cost and Benefits of Pruning and Spiritual Leadership. And what a blessing this series has been to me, and I pray to you as well. Just understanding what pruning is all about, what we can learn from the process of pruning and realizing that God prunes us as well. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to prune, to be the gardeners of our vineyard. And so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. But you know what I want you to do? I want you to engage with me, okay? Like this video, put those hearts on there, okay? Share it to your timeline. And like I said yesterday, sometimes, we're hesitant to share things because maybe we don't think others will think it is as good or meaningful or relevant as you do. Well, you know what? Let's not have that mindset. How about we just share things because they're not trash? This is not trash. It's great stuff. And it's a blessing to you, it's a blessing to others. And so I pray that that's enough for you to share on your timeline. But then also tag some friends, people that you know could be a benefit to this. And as this episode goes on, if you're like, oh gosh, me and my colleague were just talking about this, or just having a conversation about this, and we definitely need some words of wisdom. Tag that person, okay, to let them know, hey, you need to check this out. And then also comment. Let me know that you're here. Say hello, ask questions, add other tips and suggestions that you might have that could bless the body. And then react. If I say something that you like, throw up those likes, those hearts. If I say something you don't like, those mean faces and the tears, whatever it is, how you react, I'm here for it. So I want you to be engaged with me. But then also, if you're following on Facebook or LinkedIn, definitely be sure to follow Lead My Heart, the pages there, so that you don't miss content. And then also, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to this channel and then ring that bell, okay, so that you do not miss any announcements of new content or videos being posted. Okay. So, hey, you have your assignments and I hope that you fulfill it. So, this is day 2, okay, of again the series, The Cost and Benefits of Pruning and Spiritual Leadership. Yesterday, we did actually talk about the cost and benefits of pruning. What it is, what does that look like, what is involved. And I highly encourage you to go watch that episode. If you didn't see it, if you missed it, no problem. It's still there on my social media pages. So go check it out. So much information and interesting facts about trees and plant life that you probably didn't know. Okay. So go check it out. And then today we're talking about the different types of pruning, okay? And what implications that has for leadership and how we build teams, how we address issues and concerns in our organization so that we can create an opportunity for people to grow, to mature, to thrive, and to prosper in the roles that they're in. Okay, so let's first review a little bit because before I get too much into new content, if you didn't watch yesterday's episode, I just want to review what pruning is. Okay, now pruning is a maintenance technique for plant life. Okay, trees, plants, bushes, shrubs. Okay, but it's important to know that the purpose of pruning is to add strength to the plant life. It really has, even though there's a lot of cutting and trimming and discarding and ridding a part of pruning, the whole intent is to help the plant life grow and prosper. Okay, and that's by cleaning the structure of anything that doesn't belong, that no longer serves a purpose or have value, or is just an excess, okay, that is hindering that plant from being everything that God created it to be. Sounds like you're a tree? Sounds like you're a plant? Yeah. We are, like, we all have purpose in our being and why God created us. And so, one of the things that I addressed yesterday was how we can learn more about God and his intent for us, even at looking at how he made other life, such as plants and trees. Okay. And when one of the points that I wanted to bring home was the fact that there are a lot of things, yeah, that happen in the wild, with trees and plant life, um, where trees have an innate response system, a warning system. They have ways of surviving turbulent conditions. And it's warfare. It truly is warfare among the different species and plant life and animals that are part of an ecosystem. But when it comes to pruning specifically, we have to acknowledge the fact that there is an intervention. Okay. There's someone who intervenes in the the life of a tree, in the life of a plant, in order to bring some nurturing to it, some love to it. Okay. And so pruning requires a gardener. It truly does. It requires that steward. It requires that overseer. And it requires that leader. Yes. And that's the point that I'm trying to bring home. And we looked at John chapter 15, verses 1 through 8, when Jesus was saying that he is the vine and his father is the gardener. Okay. And so we have two dynamics there. And then we are the branches in Christ. And so if you're not familiar with that passage of scripture, please go read it. Again, John chapter 15, verses 1 through 8. But the one thing I want to bring home as we begin to talk about the different types of pruning is that as a leader, your organization, your business, your department, that is your vineyard. That is your territory. It is your vineyard. And you are the gardener, the steward, the caretaker, okay, the overseer, the leader in charge. And it's your responsibility as an executive leader to prune your team, to cleanse them, to cultivate them, okay, to rid them, set them free of some things for greater productivity and execution of desired outcomes that your business, your organization, your department has in alignment with this purpose. And when I'm talking about purpose, I'm talking about those, things we're familiar with as in mission, vision, values that align with that. Okay. So you are the gardener in your vineyard. And so pruning is a big part of making sure that your vineyard becomes everything that God intended it to be. Okay. So I hope that kind of gets you in the right mindset as we talk about pruning. And yeah, yesterday we talked about the costs and benefits. There's a cost, right? There are benefits to it as well. But it can be a touchy subject when it comes to having to cut things away, to trim, to discard as a leader. And no one's saying that it's easy. I'm certainly not saying that it's easy. Being a leader is hard. Being in charge and accountable for everything that happens within your vineyard is not something that we easily kind of take to, right? Not those of us who take it seriously. Okay. And so I just want us to be in the right mindset that knowing, yes, you are accountable to what happens in your vineyard. There's accountability, but I'm also recognizing the difficulty and challenges that come along with that. Okay. All right. So let's talk about these five types of pruning. Okay. And this comes from American tree experts. So shout out to you all for providing this information, really great content, but the differences are you have crown cleaning, you have crown thinning, you have crown lifting, crown reduction, and pollarding. Okay, these are the 5 different techniques. And honestly, depending on who you're talking to, they might say, they're only really like 3, or maybe there's 6 or 7. Okay, perhaps. But for the purpose of this and the content, we're sticking with the 5 that they they presented, okay? Um, so you see crown in a lot of this, and then you have the whole pollarding, right? So what is the crown? Let me zoom in here so you can see this. So you see this beautiful picture of this like amazing tree that has a type of almost canopy type shape to the crown. Okay. I think we're all familiar with what the trunk is. Okay. That's holding the structure up above ground. And then you have the branches that stem out from that. But where the leaves and all of that is growing, it creates the crown, the fullness of the tree. Okay. The top part. And so that is where, you have all the support of the leaves that is used for photosynthesis. And we know that photosynthesis is the process in which trees get their nutrients, their oxygen or carbon monoxide and all of that, which oxygen is a byproduct of this for us, thank God, by design. But this is where it gets its food and its nutrients to be able to continue to grow and thrive. So it's important. Just like leadership is important in your organization. So this is the mindset that I want you to have, or the lens, should I say, as we approach the different types of pruning, is that whereas these techniques are focused on the crown, we should be focused on the crown also in leadership. Okay. And recognizing that the crown, the leadership of our organizations, the ones who set the policies and the procedures that kind of set the tone and create the culture, is very important. And I dare say that every change that you want to implement must begin with your leaders. Now, it's not to overlook the fact that leaders have the vision. They're the ones to kind of take the initiative with the communicating and the strategies. That's not to overlook the fact that it's your non-leaders, okay, who are responsible for actually carrying out the changes and the strategies that you want to see to get to those desired outcomes. We can't overlook that. And so I'm not suggesting that people who aren't leaders aren't important. But when it comes to substantial change and true transformation and the sustainability of your vineyard, okay, it must begin with your leaders. It must begin there with the crown. And so that's one definite takeaway from understanding how pruning works and the different types. Okay. All right. So let's get into these 5 different types of pruning. And so the first one is crown cleaning. Crown cleaning. And it sounds a lot like what it is. Okay. Um, and it's to trim or to completely remove dead, diseased, or lifeless branches of a tree. Okay. So let's think about your vineyard, okay? Or your forest, however you want to look at this. But when it comes to the cleaning, you're looking at the people or leaders who are most toxic, who are creating a very toxic culture. Everything that involves them is falling apart. It's not what it should be. They're not the desired outcomes. It doesn't represent the brand of the organization. It's not in alignment with purpose. It is just a mess. Yes, we have those people, right? And it's lifeless. It's not thriving. But in this pruning process of cleaning that out, what you're doing is protecting from injury and damage, okay, to your property. What's your property? Everyone else, everything else in your organization, in your business is protecting your brand, your image, your reputation. Okay, it's protecting the effectiveness of what you're able to do, your reach, your ability to be sustainable, to build trust, okay, and to be effective at what you do. It's affecting all of that. And you're wanting to prevent the spread of disease to other branches, to other employees, to other leaders, because that can happen. If someone's being so toxic or doing things that are in a way that it's just so unlike what your organization stands for, that can spread to other people. It can become a cancer, okay, in your organization, and you want to be mindful of that. But the idea is to also, through the cleaning, and enhance the aesthetic appeal of the tree, enhance your branding, enhance your image. Um, really present a positive message in your marketing. Okay, so you see how all of this is coming together. But with the warning, there's a warning here with cleaning, and that is to prioritize only removing the dead portion of the branch. Maybe it's just one leader. It's not the whole department. Okay. Um, maybe it's just that, you're no longer allowed to do this or do that. Maybe it's not total removal that needs to be done here. So you need to be careful that you're not over pruning, that you're not overreacting, that you're being very careful to assess, okay, how far has this toxicity gone? Is it really just isolated to one person or two people? Or has this kind of, oh gosh, just infiltrated a whole department? Okay. So you want to be careful with that. And then when it comes to crown cleaning, a decision that you might ultimately come to, okay, is dismissal. And by dismissal, I mean the termination of an employee against their will. They didn't volunteer to be dismissed. They didn't quit their job. Okay, they didn't walk away. It's something that you're having to initiate as the executive leader. Now, I do want to say that this should be a last resort. Okay, after months, or I dare say a few years, okay, depending on your organization and how you really tried to work with this person. My point though is that it shouldn't be a quick decision. Okay, you really should have this as a last resort, and definitely if you're seeking dismissal, then you need to seek counsel from you know your your HR department, or even consultants that work particularly in the area of dismissals and terminations. Okay. Now, why would you get to this point? Well, because perhaps the person or people that you have in mind for dismissal have chronic poor performance. And I'm intentionally using the word chronic because with a chronic condition, it doesn't go away um, without a miracle. Okay, and I do believe in miracles, but it's not going away easily. Okay, it's something that has been around and been addressed for months, for years. Okay, and you've addressed it. You've taken the steps to provide coaching and have those heart to hearts, but yet they're still consistently not meeting specific goals. Okay. So chronic poor performance is one of them. Like, gosh, they can't meet goals to save their life. They can't even verbalize the objective. Okay. Or they have gross misconduct. And by this I mean that they're breaking laws or policies in your organization that you absolutely cannot have tolerance for. Okay. Because then that creates can create a pattern or a culture of misconduct, or um, just something you just don't want to deal with, okay, and make excuses for. You just don't. Um, so that could be a reason. and honestly, depending on the policies and law, it could be grounds for immediate termination or dismissal. Okay. But again, seek counsel on that. And then chronic toxic conduct. They're constantly late, or they're constantly absent, or they're constantly getting into arguments with people and being very belligerent, or harassing people. Okay, being very dismissive, being disrespectful, and you've addressed it, you've coached them, you've tried your best to give them chance after chance after chance, and yet it's still happening. So what do you have to do? You have to do some crown cleaning, and that's grounds for dismissal. Okay. All right. So now let's go to the second type of pruning, and that is crown thinning. Crown thinning. With the purpose of crown thinning, you want to remove the weak branches from the tree's crown and reduce excess branches. Okay. So here you're looking for the weakest link. It's like, gosh, we promoted this person. We really thought they were ready, but it's just like, dang, they're just not, it's not clicking, it's not getting it. They're just not working well with their team. The team members are frustrated with regard to their leadership. And it's just not coming together as you hoped it would. But with this type of pruning, you want the expected outcome is greater penetration of light and air and a better distribution of nutrients. Okay, so maybe they're the problem. Maybe above them, there's great communication, there's strategic leadership, everything's in alignment with purpose. But below them, gosh, the managers that direct or report to them are doing well, right? They have a sense of understanding of the objectives. They're leading their team members well, but they just don't have the leadership and supervision that they need to be able to grow. So you identify the fact that in between here, there's a weak link. Okay, so what do? They're blocking air, they're blocking light, and if we were to simply move them out of the way, then more of the branches could breathe. To have light, to be able to get everything that they need, to get the training, to get the experiences, to get the exposure that they need to different areas and teams. Okay. But with this type of crown thinning, though, you want to be careful to not remove too much mass from the center. And the center is those crucial roles. Okay, the crucial roles at that level of leadership that you don't want to say, oh gosh, this person, this person, this person. It's like, no. If those are centralized positions that serve a great purpose and directly impact um, that the ability to carry out objectives and to meet your goals or provide customer needs, then you want to be careful with how you approach this, okay? And not pruning too many people at one time. Because what it can do is that if you interfere too much with that level of management that is crucial to your organizational structure, then it jeopardizes, or should I say, compromises the integrity of the whole organization. And you don't want to do that. So you want to be careful with this. So what's your approach to crown thinning? This looks like demotion. Okay, this looks like demotion. It looks like, okay, you've identified the weak link here, and we now need to move them out of the way. We now need to kind of reduce them in rank or status, reduce them in the leadership expectation we have for them. We need to move them out of the way. Perhaps it's our fault. Perhaps we moved them too quickly. We promoted them too quickly for a job that they weren't quite ready for. Okay. Maybe we didn't provide them with all the necessary training in a time frame that allowed them to practice those skills before promoting them. Or soon enough after promotion. Okay. And so, as executive leaders, we do have to own that as well, our role and the fact that someone might not be quite ready to fulfill the role that we thought they could. Okay. And so now we're having to correct it. And it's okay to correct it. Simply because you put someone in a position does not mean you have to keep them there. Okay, yes, that's ideal. That's the goal, right? It's to help people continue to move up. But if you find that they're not performing, that they're underperforming, um, but gosh, it's a real hindrance to the organization, correct your mistake. Own up to the mistake and say, I'm sorry. We put you in this position before you were ready. And it's causing more stress, um, more frustration for you and your team than this job warrants. And we want to fix that. Okay. And so by fixing it, yes, unfortunately, that does come with a demotion. But the spin here, okay, is that you're basically just wanting to have better capacity and role alignment. Okay. Aligning capacity, what they can do, what their skills allow them to, their knowledge, okay, all of that that they bring to the table, and aligning that with the right role. Okay. And so it's your way of correcting their underperformance. Okay. And so again, that's how you present it. We're simply wanting to better align your capacity with the right role. And then another reason you might do this is to provide a second chance with disciplinary action. So you don't want to jump straight to dismissal, but maybe someone behaved or in a way or constantly kind of in this poor performance type cycle, but they're a great fit for the organization. You love them. They're hard workers, but they made a mistake, and that mistake does warrant discipline. So this is a way to do that by not simply firing them, but demoting them. Okay, with hopes that they can, in a few months, well, let's be honest, in a few years, maybe get back to that place. Okay. And then also, this is a way to award organizational fit because that's so hard, you guys. Let's be honest. Organizational fit, finding people that truly believe in the mission, vision, and values of the organization, who really feel engaged in what you do and how you do it, that is a rarity. And we don't need to dismiss this as something that just comes along every day. So when you find people like that, one way to award that when people make mistakes is to just find another place for them, whether it can be a better use or thrive in a better way, and that they can produce more, they can prosper more without being in a position that they don't need to be in. Okay, so that's crown thinning by way of demotion. All right, so let's get to technique number 3 in pruning, and that is crown lifting. Crown lifting. I love it. And the purpose of crown lifting is to trim and prune the lower branches of the crown. Now, what does this do? It reduces the load, okay, or the hardship, or the task or responsibilities, the weight that those higher branches carry. And so you have different levels of leadership. And so with crown lifting, what you're doing is making changes at lower ranks, okay, in order to kind of help the higher ranks in certain areas. Or to uplift the appearance of the crown, to lighten the load, to um, you know, help them thrive and just do better work, okay? To do good works at work. Um, but with this technique, the warning here is that you want to perform lifting on younger plant life because they do not develop deep wounds. I love that. Y'all, I'm telling you, this is straight from pruning technique. And it's just the same is true in organizations. If you want to pursue change, now I know this generation, Generation Z and X and millennials, I know give older leaders a harder time. I know that. We have very different perspectives on work and organizational life. I get that. But let's just look at overall, and the fact is that younger employees, younger leaders are much more adaptable to change. okay, than older counterparts who have been in the position 20 years, 15 years or so or more. Um, they've seen the organization. They know how things have always been done. They're comfortable with how they do their work and all of that. They're really not as open to change. Okay, not when you present it anyway. And so I love what we can learn from plant life, and that is certain those kind of changes work better when the plants are younger. They don't get those deep wounds and calluses, okay, or develop those holes like older plants will. So, great tip from nature there. And so with crown lifting, what are we doing in organizations? We're doing role adjustment. Okay, we're adjusting people's tasks and reducing them temporarily or permanently, depending on the reason. Now, it might be temporary simply for the fact that right now we need to prioritize our priorities. Okay, because everything is a priority in organizations and business, right? Everything. How do you learn to do that? But every day we have to come to the drawing board and prioritize our priorities to put first things first, okay, that is going to affect everything else that we do. And so sometimes that requires for people to change their task or reduce their task in a certain way in order to meet the current needs of the organization better. For example, during the pandemic, there are a lot of role adjustments because there was just less that people could do perhaps from home, right? So it's like, I'm sorry, we're going to have to take some responsibilities away. Um, or adjust your role a little bit because this is a need that we have right now. Another reason you might do that in support of executive leaders or your higher up leaders is to avoid burnout. Okay. And that is to protect their long term capacity to do their job well. Let me say that again. Avoiding burnout, right? In order to protect their capacity, their long term capacity for doing work well. And as a leader, we need to be sensitive to that. We need to be sensitive to the fact that people are frustrated, they're overwhelmed. You sense that things aren't going well for them. They don't want to quit. You don't want to dismiss them. You love what they do. You love how they do it. But gosh, you don't want them to burn out. And you know if they continue on the path that they're on, that they will. And so we can do that by making temporary permanent role adjustments, okay, and reducing some of those tasks that they do. Or perhaps it's reducing the amount of people that they oversee. And this is an opportunity to create a new role. Perhaps you see the need to split someone's roles into another job altogether. So you're not just taking tasks away from them, but now you're creating an opportunity for another role, okay, where there's shared responsibility, or you're reducing one person's task in order to provide greater task to someone else. Okay, and that's just as important for us to see again that give and take when it comes to crown lifting. Okay. All right. So, technique for pruning number 4. This is crown reduction. Crown reduction. And so the purpose here is to remove those terminal branches. And the terminal branches, it's like you have the trunk, right? And you have all these branches coming out from that. And then you have branches coming out from branches. And so you can have those doing, you know, 2, 3 times. Well, however many times it stems out, creating greater height for this tree, okay? Um, you're clipping those ends, you're trimming those ends off, and that is the terminal branch. And the whole point, though, of this is to preserve the main limb. It's getting too heavy. It's getting too big. This is becoming a monster. It's growing out of control. This is just too much for us to handle. And so you decrease the risk of the tree decaying. You know, um, beginning to wither, beginning to dry up, beginning to not being able to flourish as you hope it would. You might even reduce the tree height. Maybe you've gotten too big. Maybe you see, you know what? This is not the intent that we had to grow this big. We really kind of wanted to stay a small to medium sized organization. And I feel like we're getting away from our initial vision that we have for this organization. Maybe it's time to sell some of it. Maybe it's time to, restructure um, so that we can keep the height what we wanted. Okay. But also is lifting that dead weight from the tree. Okay. Because you don't want the core of what the tree is to become overwhelmed. Okay. To be overwhelmed with too many processes, too many procedures, too many products, too many services. It's just too much in some shape or form. Okay. And I think I do want to stop here for a moment and just say something that I think so often we put emphasis on big, on massive, on being this, huge corporation. Is that necessary? Is it necessary for your corporation to be so large, so big? Is it necessary for your business to grow faster than what you intend to? Oh, one of the things I'll mention this. I was thinking about this with my doctor. My amazing doctor, my primary caregiver, he recently moved into a new clinic space where he's hoping to be there long term. And he said, I'm doing very well. I have um, a nurse practitioner that he's recently hired to share in patient care. And he said, in the next few years, I'll probably hire someone else, but I don't want to grow too quickly and I negatively impact patient care. Wow, absolutely, you don't. And so I like, as my pastor says, shout out to Pastor Will, he says, small is the new big. It's the new big. And I think more than ever, people are wanting connection. They're wanting to be have attention, right? They want people to be attentive to them and their needs. We're looking for deeper, more meaningful relationships, and it's hard to do that in really big corporations. Not to say it can't happen under effective leadership, effective spiritual leadership, to be exact. It can definitely happen. But I think there's something to be said about growing too big, too fast, or growing so big that you're no longer able to care to the needs of your employees or your customers or your other stakeholders as needed. Okay. So, the warning with crown reduction is to perform reduction on younger plant life, again, in the growing phase. Okay, before you get too settled, before people get too comfortable, do this as change is already been happening. Okay, because for mature trees, it's better to remove the entire limb than pieces of it. Gosh, I hate to say that, but when you look at situations and the experiences I've had and those tough conversations, those crucial conversations we have to have, and I'm sure data supports this as well. That again, the more time someone has spent in our organization, the more they've been around. Sometimes it's better for them and the organization to okay to trim, to cut, to dismiss altogether than to kind of get them involved in so much radical change. And so, with crown reduction, what that looks like in the organization in terms of pruning is organizational restructuring. Okay. And in organizational restructuring, the whole goal is to align the structure of the organization with goals and strategies that we're implementing, that we desire, that we have. Okay. And so the reason we would do that could be mergers and acquisitions, which is a big part of business. Okay. Even those people who thought they never would consider merging and acquisitions, that's what's happening. And honestly, let me say this too. I think we need to do more conglomerates. I think that we need to find ways to better work together so that people can partner in their individual businesses and serve people well. I do. That's the word, conglomerate. And I'm all about it. Is it hard? Yes. Because, is it hard for people to partner and work together and agree? Yes, yes, yes. And you definitely need to have the lawyers and contracts to support you in this endeavor. But I think it's something really powerful and meaningful when people come together for one purpose, and can work together on different things. So just wanted to put that out there. Another reason you might do some crown reduction is to modify the management style, going from a vertical to a more horizontal or flat management type model. Again, to kind of um, flatten the structure so that you can build better relationships, so that the communication is better. There's a lot of positives that come with a more flat type leadership structure. Okay. And so if that's something that you might be interested in, look into it. But I think there's something to be said about trying to get rid of so much hierarchy, and this person has to make a decision before this person makes a decision, and before this person makes a decision. Come on, let's cut that out as much as we can, so that we can get things done. Okay, and get things done more succinctly. And then the last reason you might do this, or another, I'm not going to say the last because certainly there's more than three, the external pressure, okay, that you might have to do this. But like laws, some statutes, some regulations that have recently changed, and now you're needing to, um, you know, make changes in your organization to different leadership, in order to be compliant. Okay. So that is crown reduction. And our last one that we're talking about today, our last pruning technique that is utilized is called pollarding. Okay, pollarding. And the purpose of it is to remove all primary branches and preserve the secondary branches on the tree trunk on a reoccurring basis. Yikes. It's true. It's almost like you're stripping it. You're stripping it down to a healthy, lean state. And the reason that this happens is that when you see trees or plant life being stripped, for flowers, right? Because you're going to sell them. You are um, um, a florist. Oh gosh, I couldn't think of that. You're a florist, okay? And or not so much a florist because you're not maybe out there necessarily doing that unless you grow your own garden. And if you are, kudos to you. That's amazing. But for those who deal with manufacturing and production, and stripping trees, for wood, for fuel, or for food or whatnot, this is really what it is. It's like you're stripping it in order for a secondary reason. You're not stripping it so much for the tree's betterment or for it to continue to be able to thrive. You're stripping it in order to use those pieces for a secondary reason. Again, fuel, food, timber, whatever. Um, but you're pruning it in a way that it can continue to grow a lot, so that in the next few months or years, you can come and do it all over again. Okay. Now, the warning with this is that you only want to perform pollarding on young trees, okay, for the best results. Okay, once trees get old and they begin to decay and, just so settled, not really in a state of being adaptable to different types of environments, especially with the inclement weather and global and climate the climate change and global warming, I can see that older trees are having more difficulty adapting. Okay. And same is true as people. Same is true. We've mentioned this before, but again, it's something to consider. And then also, we must understand that in order to do this, you must have a deep understanding of the tree and its needs, the type of tree, okay, the type of environment it's in, and what is its history. Okay. So we also want to consider that when it comes to people. What type of person are they? What type of personality do they have? What is their skill set? What has been their employment history? Um, are there other things that we maybe are aware of that will impact our decision making, or or is there something that we don't know that we need to inquire about that will help us make a more informed decision? So, we need to know that. And then when I'm sorry, when it comes to pollarding, gosh, why is that so hard for me to say? Pollarding, and organizations, that looks like layoffs. Okay. And I know that that is not something that we like to hear. Um, my sincere, condolences to anyone who's ever experienced layoff. But I certainly do want to encourage you in the fact that God is greater than someone telling you you no longer have a job here. Your purpose is greater. And so see that every closed door is an opportunity to walk into the right one. Okay. To seek those new opportunities, to pursue that dream that you wouldn't have had before. And I know people say that a lot, and I truly do mean that. For example, there were two jobs that I applied for, interviewed for, ended up being in the top two candidates for two different jobs, probably around 2017, between 2016, 2017. And both of them ended up being a no for various reasons I won't get into. But it was a no. And I started to become like, "Oh my gosh, like, why was this a no? Like, how did I not get this job?" Like, I went in there with great ideas. I'm like ready to hit the ground running. I went in there and I showed them how much I know about the organization, how prepared I am, answered all their questions. I know that they were impressed, and the list goes on and on. But regardless, they went with other people. Um, but the beauty of the no's was that I got to not get distracted, to not take a detour on the purpose and the assignment that God had for me. And that was to go to China. And had those jobs, either one of them been a yes, I would not have been pursuing China and had the opportunity to be an international educator and an international motivational speaker. And so, and to even do ministry in another country. I would have missed out on all of that had they said yes. And so, even though I felt slighted, it's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening." God, thank you. Thank you for the no's. Those are the best no's I could have gotten. And I just want to take that moment to encourage you in your no's and closed doors. Okay. And the truth is, with layoffs, is termination without anything having to do with performance. And you need to understand that it's not against you. It's just what the organization needs. And whereas you pray that as an executive leader, you're never in that position to have to do that. But again, executive leaders, we have to face some tough decisions sometimes, very hard decisions. And so this is definitely one of them. Whichever side you find yourself on. And some of the reasons we might do this is to reduce redundancy, by eliminating roles or jobs that are no longer needed. Okay, because so many other people are filling that role. We don't have as many clients as we used to, or customers, or because of policies, laws, and regulations. We've had to back out of certain countries. And so now we have to close down those divisions. So many different reasons regarding to reducing redundancy. But another reason, a top reason, and is also to reduce costs quickly. And that might be all to pay off organizational debt. Um, is it always due to poor management? Sometimes it could be, but it could also be due to investors pulling out. And now you're having to cover those expenses for those investors that are no longer there. Now, certainly that does require some soul searching as to why debts aren't being managed properly, as to why investors are pulling out, okay, so that you don't face these types of challenges again. But is that a way to, I won't say fix it, but salvage kind of some things that are happening in an organization financially? Yes. Okay. And then survival. Okay, by taking drastic measures to survive turbulence. Um, Gosh, during the pandemic, many businesses are still haven't recovered. If they didn't close, they're still struggling to stay open. We're not out of the woods with inflation and the penny costs, and then you add the great resignation into all of that. The fact that you can't get even people to show up, you can't even pay people to show up anymore, or they ghost you, and then that impacts the kind of customer service you're able to provide, and then customers getting frustrated that you couldn't do this or you couldn't do that or you couldn't do it well, and then now they're leaving. It's a horrible cycle. But it's something to definitely consider with regards to those layoffs. Okay. All right. So that was the fifth task or technique regarding pruning. And look how much we learned, right? Regarding why we should prune, how we should do it, the warnings of how we do that among leadership and organizations. But one last thing I want to address with you when you're preparing to do this, because it's not going to be easy, it's not simple, it's not something we smile about and look forward to. It's not. It's a very heart wrenching, sad, challenging moment in leadership. But as the gardener, it's things that we have to do. When I think about God and his heart towards us, I know that God doesn't like to see us brokenhearted and crying and in despair because of relationships we had to let go of, because of jobs we had to walk away from, because of marriages that didn't work, or because, you know, children you're having to have tough love for, or countries that you had to leave unexpectedly. There's so many things that God allows in our life in order to prune us, to help us grow and thrive and prosper, and for Him to promote us into the places He wants us to be. I know that's not easy, and I'm humanizing God in a way, so forgive me. I'm not meaning to disregard His sovereignty, but we are made in His image. And I know that God does have feelings of frustration, of disappointment towards us. And so, um, and you can read, especially in the Old Testament, and see that in his relationship with the Israelites. So if that was too harsh for you, go read your Bible. It's there. um, but it's true. Um, God has a lot of emotions when it comes to dealing with his people. It's not an easy thing, I'm sure, for him to see, but at the same time, he knows it's what's best for us. And so he does it anyway. Yeah. He hurts us anyway, right? He cuts us anyway. He discards anyway. He rids us of things anyway, because that's what's best for us. Um, so some best practices as you approach pruning is, number one, to pray and plan. Pray and plan and pray. Okay, they go together. Seek godly wisdom regarding how you should approach this, and putting it in writing, really putting some structure around that. And then include the Rossi. And the Rossi are those people who are responsible for carrying this change out, who are accountable. Maybe there are other leaders that are involved, those that need to be consulted regarding this change or this pruning process. And then those in traditional Rossi, it's those who are informed. But here, I'm going to throw in that other I that I like to use, and that is those who are impacted. That leader that you're needing to prune are those leaders, okay? Developing a communication plan for them and a change management team around it. And then the next best practice is to align your why with organizational mission and employee wellness, okay? Ensure that your intention is good. Pruning is good. Pruning is not to hurt people, to check people, to put them in their place. It's because you want them to thrive. Even in the case of crown cleaning, where you're dismissing people, your heart and intent should still be to see that person get in the organization where they can perform well, where they can feel a part of the culture and believe in what they're doing, to be more engaged in their work, so that they can live a more fulfilling life, that they can spend most of their working hours that they spend, their lifetime doing happy, finding joy and meaning in what they do, because they clearly don't find that in your organization. So that should even be the intent behind dismissal. And then realizing that the organization needs and deserves better as well. Okay. So you're not putting organizational needs above employee wellness. They have to go together. Okay. And so how you handle this matters. And then do not relent. Do not relent. Stay committed. Okay. Don't talk to someone and then change your mind. Oh, don't do that. Okay. Because before you go into this, you should have all the data, all the information, all the documentation you need in order to follow through. You don't want to bring this up of dismissal and then change your mind, or bring up reducing task and then change your mind as your final answer, as your final decision, and then not stick to it. Not a good look. So follow through, okay? And so, y'all, that's it for today's episode. This was a longer episode. Gosh, I didn't intend for it to be this long, but this is good stuff. This is good stuff. And so I pray that you have just been like, woo, like, wow, I can't believe how much we learned from pruning as to how we approach pruning in our organization. Yep, we have to do it. Why? Because we executive leaders are the gardeners in our vineyard. Okay. And we want it to thrive, we want it to prosper, and we want everyone attached to us to be everything that God called them to be. We want our organization to be everything that God created it to be. And so pruning is a part of that. All right. So, y'all, let me know your thoughts, your comments, any questions that you have. Post them. I would love to see them, and I would get back with you. Okay. Um, But tomorrow, join me for day 3, the last episode of this series, The Costs and Benefits of Pruning and Spiritual Leadership, where we're talking about pruning and spiritual leadership from the standpoint of the things that we need to consider in regards to leading others, okay, through the pruning process, leading how we are led in the pruning process when we're the ones being pruned. Yikes. Yes, when we're being pruned, how we approach that. And then, when God is pruning us, when maybe we need to take ownership too of pruning ourselves. Wow, that takes a lot of self accountability, doesn't it? But it's necessary. So join me tomorrow live at 2 p.m. for that Central Time, okay? And then, y'all, that's it. Okay, so follow me on all social media. I say all, not really. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok at Leap My Heart 2022. Okay, and remember, okay, before you go, what do we always say? In everything you do and with everything you have, love God and love people. Goodbye.